Welcome to another lesson for the Life in the UK test. Today we'll be looking at the Tudor Dynasty. In the previous lesson, we left off at the Wars of the Roses, in which Henry Tudor defeated Richard III, thereby becoming Henry VII, who married Elizabeth of York to unite the two houses and creating the Tudor Dynasty. After winning the Wars of the Roses, Henry VII was determined to create a strong, stable monarchy. He did this by limiting the power of the nobility and strengthening royal administration. He was also very careful with money, helping the monarchy become financially secure. His son, Henry VIII, carried on centralizing power and even became the King of Ireland, as English authority had spread across Ireland. But Henry VIII is more famously remembered for his break with the Catholic Church. Henry wanted to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, because she hadn't given him a male heir. When the Pope refused to grant him a divorce, Henry decided to break away from the Roman Catholic Church, which had been the dominant religious authority across most of Europe for centuries. He created a new church in England called the Church of England. The big difference? Instead of the Pope, Henry made himself the head of this new church. This meant he could now control religious decisions in England, including granting his own divorce. This break from Rome was part of a much bigger religious shift across Europe known as the Reformation, a 16th century religious movement that established Protestantism in England. This was when many people started to challenge the authority and practices of the Catholic Church. Those who supported these changes became known as Protestants, because they were protesting against Catholic traditions. So, the Church of England was England's Protestant alternative to the Catholic Church, and Henry VIII was its first leader. When Henry VIII died in 1547, his son Edward VI came into rule at just 9 years old. He was a committed Protestant. Under his rule, the Church of England became more Protestant in its practices, and the Book of Common Prayer was introduced. However, after his death at only 15 years old, his older half-sister Mary I came to the throne. A loyal Catholic, she tried to reverse these reforms and famously persecuted Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. After her short reign, when Mary died in 1558 without any children, the throne passed to Elizabeth, who was next in line. Elizabeth was a Protestant, but she understood that religious conflict was tearing the country apart. So Elizabeth I reinstated the Church of England as the national religion, but unlike her siblings, she didn't enforce strict conformity. While church attendance and services were required, she didn't interrogate people's private faith. This helped keep religious conflict at bay. Her popularity soared after the dramatic defeat of the Spanish Armada, a Catholic fleet sent by Spain to conquer England. While Elizabeth I managed to avoid major religious conflict in England, things were more complicated in Scotland. Scotland had its own royal family, its own politics, and its own approach to religion. This brings us to a key figure, Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, Elizabeth's cousin and a Catholic monarch living in a country that was becoming increasingly Protestant. Mary Stuart became Queen of Scotland as a baby and was raised largely in Catholic France. Her return to Scotland caused political turmoil, especially as Protestantism had grown stronger there. After her husband's murder, she fled to England seeking protection, leaving her son James VI on the throne. But Elizabeth saw her as a threat to the English throne and had her imprisoned for 20 years before eventually ordering her execution. With Mary gone, Elizabeth's reign entered a new phase, a golden age of national pride, overseas exploration, and cultural achievement. Let's take a look at how this period shaped English identities. Explorers like Sir Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe on his ship, the Golden Hind, and challenged Spanish dominance overseas. English settlers began establishing footholds in America, though larger waves would come later. At home, the arts thrived, especially theatre. For example, William Shakespeare wrote dramas that touched every part of society, from kings and queens to everyday citizens. His storytelling, emotional depth, and creative use of language left a lasting mark. He even coined many words and phrases we still use. His Globe Theatre remains a major attraction in London today. The beginnings of the slave trade also occurred during this time. The English got involved in the slave trade during the Tudor period under Elizabeth I. In the 1560s, John Hawkins became the first Englishman to lead slave trading voyages from West Africa to the Americas with royal backing. But at this stage, it was limited and not yet a major system. This is where I'll wrap up this lesson on the Tudor Dynasty. The next lesson will be on the Stuarts. Thanks for joining, and I hope to see you again in the next one.